I am here to do another creepy, scary, as it were, readings. Now, um, first of all, before I start, I want to send a big shout out to the ASMR Outlaws of Facebook. Um, uh, Laura Minks. I love her hangouts. They're awesome. They're awesome. But yeah, ASMR Outlaws. I'm sorry, I don't have a poncho. I don't do ponchos personally because when I was in the Marine Corps, I had an experience with ponchos and it made me dislike them a lot. So, but anyway, let's get started. Now, these stories involve the occult, particularly, or more specifically, the use of Ouija boards. That's a weird word, isn't it? It's spelled Ouija, but it's pronounced Ouija, 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 Ouija. Weird. But anyway, I'm just having my sip of tea before I go to bed. I'm about to crash after this. I got things to do in the morning. Anyway, our first story comes to us from the Redditor known as Long Story. And the O right after the L is a 0. So, just in case you decide to look them up. Here we go. Long story. I wanted to start out by saying this story is 100% true. I know people will say that to add immersion, but it really is. And this is the only place I knew where to post it. Okay. Immersion. Do I believe everything that happened actually happened? Not necessarily. I'm as skeptical as you will be, and I welcome any explanation as to how the events that occurred were not supernatural. It could have been an elaborate prank on behalf of my friends, but there are several reasons why I find that hard to believe. Mass hysteria, maybe. Who knows? Anyway, here is the story. I enlisted in the United States Army in 2009 and had my AIT Advanced Individual Training in Fort Huachuca, Arizona. For you Arizonians out there that are listening, I apologize if I'm not reading this word correctly, but it's spelled Hauchuca. Huachuca, Arizona. Someone please correct me. I'm sorry. Pretty much any soldier stationed at Fort Huachuca, often nicknamed Fort Wegacha, has above average intelligence. Most of the MOSs, or military occupational specialties, require a very high ASVAB score. The ASVAB is the test that people take in order to get into the military. I took it too in order to get into the Marine Corps. Needless to say, the friends I made were a unique bunch. Many of us gaming nerds. Huachuca is about 20 minutes from the Mexican border and about 40 minutes from the infamous Tombstone, Arizona. One day we were bored and swapping ghost stories. One of my buddies brought a Ouija board. at Walmart for us to play around with. We'll call him Jackson to protect his identity. I'm not sure Jackson believed in the supernatural, but when your disposable income to free time ratio is skewed horribly in the wrong direction, you buy stupid stuff to entertain yourself with. Having been a Marine, I can relate to that and all the stupid purchases I've made. But I'm sure some of you civilians out there can relate to the same stupid purchases. Anyway, I'll continue. Jackson and I attempted to use the Ouija board in our barracks as the base is extremely old and rife with hauntings. Unfortunately, the barracks we had recently moved to were brand new, so the Ouija didn't work. Tired of strip clubs and flirting with the Mexican border, we hungered for a unique adventure. I brought up the idea of traveling to nearby Tombstone. Jackson lit up when I mentioned this, as he just heard a story of a haunted house in Tombstone he wanted to check out. We came to a quick ghost haunting consensus and invited our buddy Thompson along for the ride. We arrived at Tombstone shortly after dark. It was not quite how I expected it. I had pictured a literal ghost town with a few dilapidated Wild West buildings and the obligatory tumbleweed blowing through the street. This was not the case at all. Even at night, it's basically a normal town with a few historical buildings and tourist traps. In addition to the downtown stretch, they have a residential area like any other small town in America. It was in this residential area that we began hunting for the supposed haunted house. We got out to the area we thought it was in, but weren't sure which house it was. After a few minutes of circling the block, the group decided to take a break. Everyone went in a separate direction to use the bathroom. They took a bathroom break. But I could not find a place private enough, so I didn't go. I was the second person back in the car. I climbed into the back seat and asked Jackson, "Where's Thompson?" "I don't know. He's been gone for a while." "I'll text him," said Jackson. All of a sudden, Thompson, looking whiter than he normally does, comes sprinting towards the car and frantically tries to open the passenger door. Jackson calmly unlocks the door and lets him in and asks, "What happened?" "Dude, you're not going to believe this." Expletive. Thompson gasped. His southern drawl tinged like a cello string. "I was just in the house that looked abandoned, right? So I go in and I look around and decide to have a smoke. I look down at my phone to text you guys and tell you about it when all of a sudden something touched my shoulder." "Holy cow, what was it?" I asked. Okay, he's using profanity. And if you watch my channel for any amount of time, you know that I don't use profanity. So I'm editing this as I'm reading it. Okay. "Holy cow, what was it?" I asked. "Nothing. There was nothing there." I sprinted back to the car. Pumped with adrenaline, curiosity, and stupidity, I suggested we go full mystery machine and park in a nearby lot and use the Ouija board from inside the car. As soon as we could get parked roughly half a block away, we anxiously pulled out the Ouija board and put it in our laps. As the person designated to ask questions, I began, "Is anyone here there?" To my disbelief, the planchette started moving. It moved slowly but surely towards yes. Were you the thing that touched Thompson? Yes, it replied again. Were you the ghost in the haunted house that we're going to visit? No, it answered. Now this is what took me by surprise. If this was one of the others trying to scare us, why wouldn't they take the obvious bait? Claim to be the ghost we saw and commence scaring us. I mean, that's like Nigerian scammer writing to you about your long lost fortune and then responding no when you ask if he's able to give you $6 million instead of $5.5 million. At this point, I had a flashback of just about every creepy Ouija experience I'd ever seen or read about. They always started with some cliche questions like, LOL, how did you die? And ended with OMFG and a flurry of telekinetic activity. I wanted this session to be different. After all, we were a hand-picked bunch of intelligent people, not a group of scared teenagers. If this was real, I wanted the specter to break history with me. So I took a moment and started thinking, what would I want to know about a ghost? What questions can I ask that aren't cliche? What can I ask that will break the linear decision tree where all Ouija boards end up telling you they want you dead? I realized any question I asked had to be extremely specific and offer no chance for creepy deviation in the answer. I suppose I could ask it for the coefficient of pi, and it would just respond with die over and over, but I had faith in the ghost. So the first question I asked was, name the one thing the building you touched Thompson in was used for. The placente slowly started to move again. I thought to myself, this thing can't possibly get creepy from this question. I bet it will say like the general store or post office or SLAUGHTER, slaughter. The pucker factor, 9. Good game, Ghost. Have an upvote, I guess. But seriously, again I realized this was probably not one of us joking around because slaughter has not been used as a common term since the 1800s. You don't log onto CNN and see man slaughtered today in a small house in Arizona. Details at 11. If my friends were pulling a prank, the easiest verb would have been something like murder or butt sex. Intrigued, I decided to ask why it touched Thompson. Help, it replied. Thinking this would lead somewhere creepy, I asked when it died instead. 1867. Again, I started thinking of questions I could ask that no one ever thinks to ask a ghost. I remember hearing on some website that you are never supposed to ask a Ouija board about God. So I did the only logical thing an atheist would do at this point. Why aren't I supposed to ask you about God? No, came a quick, terse reply. So I tried to be more creative. I asked it, if you were playing World of Warcraft, what class would you play? It's gonna say Undead Warlock. I guarantee. No, it snapped again. It was weird. Despite being an entity that couldn't directly talk to us, you could almost sense its tone of voice through how it moved the planchette. I wanted to continue asking it questions, But our first sergeant interrupted the session with a frantic phone call. He ordered all of us back to base for 100% accountability due to someone losing their weapon. Disappointed, we packed up and headed back. The next day, we were telling the others in our platoon about our experience the night before. After many BS and eye rolls, another soldier named Green showed interest. We decided to try to talk to the ghost again and take Green with us. He had an SUV, which would give us more room to set up the board. As a soldier, my first instinct was not only to plan our arrival and departure time, but safety contingencies as well. This was especially on my mind after the previous night. I briefed the group in advance that if anything creepy happened, we were better off with a pre-identified plan on what to do so as to take the spirits by surprise. Our ghost hunting standard operating procedure was as follows. At approximately 2000 hours, or 8 o'clock, we will depart for Tombstone. This will allow us to arrive after dark. We will take 2 vehicles, Green's SUV and Jackson's coupe. Jackson and Thompson will ride in the coupe, while Green and I will ride in the SUV. We will set up our session in the SUV so as to allow for a quick departure if anything spooky happens. We will leave any weapons or sharp objects back at the base. Spirits can only harm others by proxy. If there are no objects around to throw or possess someone into using, then the only physical danger will be soiling our underwear. In the event one of us feeling creeped out beyond disbelief or an impending sense of doom, we will give an obvious signal to the others to quickly pack up and leave. Each soldier will return to the vehicle they traveled in and take off back to base. Upon leaving the scene, the vehicles will immediately establish contact via cell phone to ensure safety and share in a moment of, holy cow, what in the world just happened? So it was settled. We had our plan. We were feeling confident. The undead were no match for Arizona's finest soldiers. We parked in the same lot we had the night before and eagerly took out our Ouija board. There were 4 of us, so now we were feeling confident. But I won't lie. If I told you that I was jittery, but I wouldn't lie if I told you that I was jittery. Literally, everything I knew about life in the universe at this point was challenged by what we had seen the previous night. I felt like the equivalent of someone who discovers a 6-inch tall genie in their closet that only they can talk to. It literally felt surreal, like a movie. Green was especially nervous about being with us, as he was raised Catholic. Though he was no longer religious, he still had that strongly ingrained fear of Ouija boards. Green opted to just separate us. Green opted to just spectate as we placed the placement on the board. There were 3 of us controlling it. We started by asking if anybody was there and received a very slow, strained yes. I asked if it was the same being we talked to in the previous night, and it said no. Going off the same theme as last night, I wanted to mind blank the ghost. And then I want to give it the opportunity to be creepy. And I wanted it to answer questions no one would think to ask. I wanted to expose the ghost's vulnerabilities. As of now, the ghost was this mysterious, all-powerful being. However, as any logical person knows, the paranormal is just science, yet not discovered. The ghost must have limits, I thought. It isn't God, and therefore has things it cannot do, things it cannot have. So I had the right idea to ask, what is one thing you want that you cannot have? Life, it answered. I wasn't sure whether to feel like an idiot, a butt, or both. Before I could decide between shame and stupidity, the interior light in Green's brand new SUV flickered. Holy cow, that doesn't just happen. The only time I've ever seen a light flicker in a car was when it was being started. This was getting a little too real. This spirit was alpha, and it was asserting its ethereal dominance. After gaining my composure, I began to brainstorm more ideas about more questions. I've been asking it all the questions. Let me give it a try. Thompson contested me. I'm sorry, let me reread that. You've been asking it all the questions. Let me give it a try. Thompson contested me. Fine, go ahead, I said. What do you want from us? He asked in his defiant Georgia accent. Steve, S-T-E-V. Dude, there's no way, I thought to myself. My name is Stephen and all, but there is no E-N. At this point, I was terrified. No one there knew my first name but Thompson. Also, the placent was moving in a puppeted fashion away from Thompson when it spelled it out. The best way I could describe it was an invisible thread straight up, straight from the front of the car, pulling the placet based on how it twisted and turned. There was no one in the front of the car. Before I could even react, the center console, which was about 5 inches ajar, closed by itself. It calmly invoked our military plan of action. Okay guys, it just spelled out my first name. Let's get the blink out of here. No one said a word or hesitated for a second. Thompson and Jackson scrambled out of the SUV and into Jackson's Eclipse. Green and I piled into the front seat of the SUV. Green immediately shifted to drive and peeled out the dusty lot. I'm sure if Ford Escape has never been used in such a literal fashion. Green was in shock, and so was I. My atheist brain was questioning if God might actually be real, and Green's devout brain was pondering the opposite. Our trance was broken by Green's alternate rock ringtone. It was surreal hearing pop culture in that moment when our brains were so far removed from reality. Green answered the phone. It was Jackson and Thompson. Their car wouldn't start. They had never left Tombstone. Green slams on the brakes and bangs a U-turn that would put Vin Diesel in diapers. He floors the modest SUV. We were going about 100 miles per hour heading down Arizona 82 back towards Tombstone. Dude, slow down, I yelled. At this point, I was far more afraid of Green's driving than the spirits. They're our friends. We can't leave them there. We knew the general direction back to Tombstone and arrived rather quickly. Tombstone isn't as tiny as you would imagine, and we couldn't quite remember where we had parked at first. As I am trying to figure out where we are, Green freaks out. Oh my goodness. What, dude? I can't. I'm not driving the car anymore. What are you talking about? I can't move. As if it couldn't get any more frightening, I realized in the middle of Green's outburst that we had inadvertently ended up at the parking lot we left. I'm always trying to think logically, so I deduced the following. At this point, two things are possible. Green is possessed by a butthurt ghost who basically told me to check my living privilege. Green is experiencing a psychotic breakdown. Either of those is a threat to our safety at this point. So I just started shouting at him with simple commands if he is possessed or simply psychotic. Simple instructions were the best course of action. Green, stop the car. Green, stop the car. Green, stop the car. I ordered in a commanding voice. Eventually, logic and reason fought off whatever had possessed him, and he pulled over. I switched seats with him and began driving. Right after I took over driving, Jackson called and let us know they were safe, then about 10 minutes down the road towards base. Green was still in a trance, but once we got about a quarter mile from ground zero, whatever triggered him without warning originally had left. This leads me to believe that if ghosts are real, they have the effective possession range of a quarter mile. Throughout the ride, we struggled to comprehend what had happened that night. Green told me that he could tell the ghost wanted me, and that it was telling him to drive down an alley, but that he came to his senses in time. He said it wanted me bad, and it wanted him to kill me. It probably would have had him attack me before we left, but our premeditated escape took it by surprise. So it stalled Jackson's car to lure us back. I asked him, why didn't he just kill me instead? And he told me, probably because I'm bigger than you and more emotional. You think very logically. You're a lot harder for a spirit to manipulate. Plus, I was in control of the car. This made sense and was pretty chilling to think about it. If the spirit had succeeded, it would have simply hit the news. Us, as soldiers murders other soldier in Tombstone. Post-traumatic stress disorder suspected. I imagine that's the case when you hear about mothers spontaneously drowning their children in the bathtub. Or other inexplicable murder-suicides. It's probably a ghost or a spirit, but gets blamed on psychosis. I never thought about it like that. About halfway back to base, we stopped at a gas station. Green, still not completely in his right mind, opened the hatch of the SUV, took out a sunshade that came with his car, and threw it in the dumpster. What did you do that for? I don't know. It just felt evil. Really evil, he answered. That was the final straw on how real this was. It really drove in how much this was probably not an elaborate prank. How would he go to the extent of throwing away an expensive OEM part of his car to freak me out when I was already emotionally exhausted? To this day, I am still an atheist, but I do wonder about the paranormal, as it could very well be science not yet discovered. I would imagine that communicating with spirits is the equivalent of trying to talk to an invisible man in the room who cannot touch anything. His only way of communicating is holding a portable fan and blowing paper suspended by a string from the ceiling. He blows it right for yes and left for no. I imagine this is why they communicate in such slow and brief answers. I did a little more research on the location and posted a map and pictures for you guys below. Ironically, we were in the parking lot for the OK Corral, the famous haunted location where the outlaws had their shootouts in the 1800s. From what I can gather, the gunfight happened well after 1867. But keep in mind, we talked to two separate spirits. I can't help but wonder if the second one was one of them. There's a link that shows the points of interest. I'll post that in the bottom. And then there's also a street view of the parking lot where they were in. I'll post that link as well. Also, I've heard of the idiometer effect, so if you would like to help me come up with some logical explanations for what happened, keep in mind I am aware of that, and it does not explain the light flickering and the console moving. I am also aware of Occam's razor and would welcome a shave at this point. I think it would save my sanity. So please, Reddit, convince me I'm crazy. Wow. Somebody else learned not to play with Ouija boards, and this time an atheist. So far, all the Ouija board experiences I've been reading about have mostly been people who were Catholic or people who were atheists. Not that I'm making fun of atheists, please don't feel that way. It's just that atheists have such a staunch and hardened way of thinking. You know, I don't want to say they refuse, but they literally, what am I trying to say here? They think logically. People who think logically, most of the people that I know that think really logically, have a problem when it comes to God, because God doesn't fit into a box. And the fact of the matter is, you can't fit God into a box. That's why it's probably so hard for staunch, logical thinkers to believe in Him. That's why it takes having an experience with Him for them to believe. And what these people had, what these four soldiers had, was not an experience with God. Trust me, it's not. Because God doesn't do things like that. Anyway, the next story comes from Shake Shack. That's Shake, spelled just the way it sounds, underscore Shack, spelled just the way it sounds. Not like Shaquille O'Neal, but like an old house. I guess I could share my Ouija board story with you. This happened at least 15 years ago, and I'm 27 now, so I was just a kid at the time. Anyways, there were at least 4 of us in my basement. My brother and his friend, and the 4th I cannot remember, possibly my older brother. We had a single lit candle for light, and it was set on the mantle of the fireplace. To this day, I can't remember what we were asking it, but the next part I remember clear as day. The questions we were asking it were angering it in some way. I remember looking up at the candle for a brief second, and just as I did, it was blown out. We were in pitch darkness. As soon as the candle went out, I heard the sound of a sword or a knife being drawn from its sheath. It was loud and clear as day. Then it spoke to me. I can't remember what it said, but its voice was like a deep growl. All of this happened in a few seconds. I was petrified and couldn't move a muscle. But it ended as soon as it started when the basement lights came on. I guess as soon as the candle went out, my brother ran to turn the lights on. That was the last time I used a Ouija board. Good job. Make that your last time. And for those of you who may be considering using a Ouija board, allow me to urge you not to. It is nothing to play with. These people found out the hard way that it is not a game. It's not some toy. I don't know why they sell it on shelves like it is some kind of a toy. It's not a toy. It is real. It is serious business. And you could find yourself in a lot of trouble. Okay. The next story comes from Annuvin. That's Annuvin. My girlfriend told me the story about an experience she had with the Ouija board while in high school sometime in 1986. She had a friend named Johnny who was suffering from CF or some other debilitating illness who had recently been hospitalized as a result. Both she and her friend Shelley visited Johnny regularly in hopes of keeping his spirits up for a quick recovery. One night after visiting Johnny, they were at Shelley's when they decided to try out the Ouija board. After a while, they started communicating with the spirit who seemed to know a lot about them, that it really shouldn't. After some banal questions about boys and different questions one would expect teenage girls to ask, my girlfriend decided to ask about Johnny and his condition. The board quickly spelled out 24 June 1987. Johnny won't have to worry anymore, and went to goodbye. My girlfriend and Shelley were so convinced that the board was giving them a date for recovery that they actually wrote the message down and sealed it in an envelope. The following year, on June 24th, it turned out that Johnny indeed no longer needed to worry about his condition. It was the day he died. Scary. Then, wow. Okay, the next story comes from Devientz, Devientz. First off, this story is about an experience I had using a Ouija board when I was in the 7th grade. I'm 28 now, so it was quite a while ago. I don't remember some of the smaller details anymore, but everything I'm writing actually happened, and this story is 100% true. I'm the kind of person who would probably never have believed in anything paranormal unless I experienced it for myself. So, in a way, I'm glad that this happened to me when it did, as it opened my eyes when I was still young. This all happened at my friend Mark's house. It was on a weekend. Me and 3 of my friends had been hanging out at Mark's house all afternoon. Mark's parents were going out all night, and they had a rule that no friends were allowed over when they weren't there. So we were all getting ready to leave. Mark's parents were both doctors, and they were insanely strict. He used to get grounded for weeks at a time for the most ridiculous reasons. I remember him getting grounded one time for one of his friends calling his house during dinner time. Needless to say, we were all pretty surprised when his mom came upstairs and told us that we could stay over there that night as long as we were good. In those days, having a house free of parents was a huge deal, and we were all really excited. Before I go on, let me explain the layout of the house real quick. It's a nice neighborhood, but the lots aren't that large. A typical garage would take up most of the width of the house. The houses were long. His garage had the houses were long. His house had a garage in the front. There was a long walkway. There was a walkway along the side of the house that leads to the front door, which is where the center of the house. When you walk in, there's a small guest bedroom to your left and the entrance to the garage on the far end of the left wall. You're right there. To your right, there is a large open family room with huge vaulted ceilings. At the far end of the family room was the entrance to the kitchen, dining room area at the back of the house. Directly across from you was a wrap-around staircase leading upstairs. Basically consisted of 2 bedrooms and the far end of the house and a master bedroom above the garage. They were connected to a walkway that overlooked the entire family room entranceway directly above. The entranceway was a small game room which has no doors and connected to the walkway right before the master bedroom. So anyways, after his parents left, a few of us ran home real quick to get a few things. We all lived pretty close and could skateboard home in 5 minutes. When everyone returned, one of my friends had brought a Ouija board. He got a couple of weeks before. We had used it one time before, but were eager to try it out again. We went upstairs to the game room to set it up, while Mark locked up the house and turned off all the lights downstairs. When everything was all set up, the house was completely dark except for the dimmed ceiling fan light we had on so we could see. I honestly can't remember the specific questions we asked or the responses we got back. I do remember 2 brief interactions that went to goodbye before this got weird. By this time, we were all pretty into it, and the questions were more provocative. I distinctly remember immediately feeling that this was one more intense than the previous times, and I was getting kind of nervous. Give me a minute here. Okay, I just wanted to make sure my phone was silent. Okay, what's this? Okay. The responses weren't the kind of a typical 7th grader could come up with, even if they were controlling it, which is basically what I assumed the Ouija board was up until this point. Questions that could be answered with yes or no would be spelled out, and the responses were menacing than before. Everyone there was getting scared. You could see it in their faces, but nobody wanted to act scared. Then my friend Brad, who had been asking most of the questions, blurts out, "Prove it, do something." There was a few seconds of pure silence. Any sound whatsoever would have probably scared us to death. Just as I was starting to feel relief, there was a gut-wrenching shriek from the cat downstairs, directly below us, followed immediately by the sound of scattering glass on the tile floor. I can't explain the fear I had at that moment. Everything was blurred for a moment. The next thing I remember, we were all huddled in the back of the game room. All you could see outside the room past the walkway was the top half of the stairway leading upstairs from the entryway. We watched those stairs for what seemed like 15 minutes without saying a word. At some point, we decided we had to go check out what happened. We all grabbed whatever makeshift weapons we could find. I think I had a pencil. and slowly made our way downstairs as a group. When we got around the corner on the staircase, the first thing I saw was a cat. It was still hissing back, arched and scared to death. It was on top of a cabinet about 10 feet from the stairs. At the bottom of the stairs was a giant puddle of water and shattered glass. It was one of those snow globes, the ones that are about the size of a small watermelon and weighed easily 10 to 20 pounds. As soon as we realized what it was, then it hit everyone that was very large, very snow globe had been on the cabinet where the cat was standing 10 feet away from where it was smashed on the floor. Before this could even sink in, music suddenly started playing in the kitchen behind us. At this point, I'm literally so scared that I'm numb. We all ran into the kitchen and turned on the lights. In the middle of the counter, in the middle of the kitchen, was one of those Santa Claus toys that shuffles around and sings along when you turn it on. Mark runs up, grabs it, starts flicking the power switch to try to turn it off. It wouldn't turn off. He frantically hits it against the counter, and when it still wouldn't turn off, he threw it as hard as he could on the ground. I know this probably sounds ridiculous, but when the toy broke, the battery cover flew off, and the toy had no batteries. The next thing I know, we're all upstairs in Mark's room, locked, praying. Nothing else happened after that, but needless to say, Mark got grounded when his parents came home to that mess. Then he got grounded for twice as long for lying about what happened. In a way, I'm glad I experienced this, but there was no way I would ever use a Ouija board again in my life. Good girl. Good call. Leave them things alone. People, leave them alone. Okay. This next story is by Deleted. By the way, this particular Reddit post was 2 years ago. So this particular person made the post, but sometime in the last 2 years, they deleted whatever they wrote. So I'm going to read what Deleted said. My dad messed with the homemade Ouija board when he was around 16. They used the glass as their pointer conductor thingy. They started getting creepy answers, and then as things got really tense, the glass fell in 2 halves on the table like a hot wire had been put through it. They all freaked out, understandably, and ran upstairs. The 4 guys all stayed in the same room. My dad said there was a smell of sulfur in the air all night and crazy banging coming from downstairs. He said it was one of the most terrifying nights of his life. Wow, I would be scared. This next story comes from Vaivacious, Vaivacious. Okay. There was a post on here a few days ago about a Ouija board experience having already told in the comments. I will make this brief. I met a girl who made Ouija boards, and by that I mean she carved into wood or wrote onto it, then just used a shot glass so it wasn't a real board. This one she carved in the upper corners we had hello and goodbye. Then the letters and the numbers sloppily done. We were 11 at the time, so we didn't really care. Then yes and no in the bottom corners. We had played 2 sessions. The first one was really slow, and it took forever to get it to say goodbye. The second session was fast-paced. Told us his name was Lucifer and that it was evil. Also refused to say goodbye. During the second session, the girl's dog started barking until we finally got the thing to say goodbye. Well, the third who made the board had her name, her phone in her room, and heard it go off, so she went to get it, but she seemed freaked out when she came back. She had 2 voicemails and no missed calls. Everyone else was too scared to listen to it, and I, being into scary stories and stuff, decided I'd listen to them. The first one sounded as if they were standing near traffic, like something was rushing past them, but a voice came on and said, "Hello, thank you for your time, feeling rushed, goodbye." And it clicked off and let me know it was the end of the message. The second one was a soft voice, not a childlike or anything, but as if they were trying to stay quiet without whispering. "Hello?" It paused for a second. "Do you want to know a secret?" "I'm in." I don't know what it said next because there was a loud noise as if something was knocked over from the girl's room. I dropped the phone in shock and disconnected it from the voicemail. We decided to listen to it when the sun was out, but the messages were long gone, and she swears she didn't delete them. Anyway, a few months go by, and everyone's seeing stuff. My best friend started seeing a shadow figure everywhere. First time was in my house. It opened the door and walked in after I left the room. The second time was in her bedroom mirror. Then it just started appearing at random. Still does to this day. I see things out the corner of my eye. I have ever since played with that board, and it always looks like a figure standing there. The height consistently changes, but when I look, it's gone. Another time, while skinny dipping with my best friend and another girl, a gray hand popped up, which made us all jump out of the pool. We all went inside, and we saw someone swimming around the pool. One night when my best friend was over, we picked out clothes for the next day and set them on my bed. We went to get a glass of water, and when we came back, they were gone. We looked around the room and couldn't find them, so we just went to bed, and when we woke up, the clothes were folded neatly and lying next to our beds. My closet door was also slightly open. I have more to tell, but some I'd like to address with more detail. I will post them, but on their own. I don't want to make this too long. Edit. I wanted to include this, and I realized I left that out. The girl who made the Ouija board started having things around her house break. She consistently felt like she was being watched and asked me to come to stay the night so we could go to summer school together the next day. While she was in the shower that morning, I decided to rest some more. I heard a popping noise, and told myself it's just the house settling, and all of a sudden there was a raspy, deep, heavy breathing in my ear. I jumped out of that bed and sat in the hall near the bathroom. I didn't see anyone in the room, and no one came out when we went in. On another note, one of the girls, I'll refer to her as Amber, was once the only one with her hands on the glass during the game. She has started to cry because of it. She's completely insane now. Like, she sees people that aren't there, and she licks people when she hugs them. Last time I saw her, she kissed my nose and licked my cheek. Said it was good to see all of us again, when it was just her and me in the room. Wow, that's terrifying. Well, I guess let the lesson be learned. Do not mess with the occult. Do not mess with Ouija boards. Those things are dangerous. Those things are terrible. And you're going to experience something that you do not want to experience. So, whatever you do, be careful. Don't play with Ouija boards. So this was video number 3 of me reading weird, creepy, scary Reddit stories. Right now, fascinated with the unknown. I'm fascinated with the unknown up until a point when it goes beyond what I want to experience, what I want to know about it. So I'm gonna go ahead and end this video right here. I got some other stuff I gotta do before the morning comes. So I bid you all adieu. And ASMR Outlaws, I'm sorry I couldn't chat with you guys today, but maybe next time. I start my new job on Monday, the 23rd. So I won't be, my schedule is going to be even more crazy because it's not set. At least with my other job, my schedule was set. My schedule isn't set with this new job because for the first month, it's going to be here, there, everywhere, all helter-skelter. But I'll still make time to do videos and post them and, go from there. Have fun with it. But anyway, you guys have a good night. And remember, God is real. He sits on his throne and he cannot be removed. And he does not hate you. He really does love you. And the purpose of him sending his son Jesus was to die for our sins. Jesus came to save the sin. Jesus came to save the sinner from his sins. He came to free those who are oppressed of the devil. And granted, some of these people open themselves up to some evil things. But the answer for mankind, for us, for them, has always been Jesus Christ. He is the one that can help them. He can. All you got to do is have faith in him. It's just that simple. But, people choose. So, choose wisely. All right, this is Smart Observer.